Welcome to the House of Truth. Today we're continuing our series on the days of the kingdom, and in particular, we're we're looking at the kingdom of David. Last time we saw the fall of the house of Saul, and before that, David's mighty men, and how it went. I was at Ziklag, and things looked really bad for him. It was really the beginning of his becoming king, of his moving into becoming king. Really, his army grew from 600 to maybe 20,000, or somewhere between 20 and 60,000. However, after that, we looked at last week. Joab, who was who after he came to Hebron was crowned king of Judah last week, became his general, and he was conniving and underhanded, provoked a war. David was trying to unite the king. Didn't want the Israel and Judah fighting anymore. He didn't want one tribe of Israel fighting against another like they had all through the book of Judges. But Joab went up there and provoked a war while David was trying to solve these things diplomatically and peaceably, and waiting for God to bring the kingdom about. And in that war, Abner killed Joab's brother, Asahel, and Asahel, and then Asahel, and then after Abner decided he was going to deliver all of Israel to David to be king. The 10 of the tribes were following Ishabeth, but really Abner. He was going to deliver him, but Joab killed Abner. And so for 5.5 years, that was 2 years after David began ruling in Hebron. So it's 5.5 more years are going to go by before David begins ruling in Jerusalem. And we're going to start looking at what's going on in those 5.5 years now. Again, that was a result of Joab. All of it was Joab's mechanisms. But even David was afraid to go against this guy, as we saw. Now, we're going to continue on in 1 Chronicles 27, 1 through 6. Now, children of Israel, after their number to wit, the chief fathers and the chief captains and the captains of thousands and their hundreds and their officers served the king in the manner of courses, which went out month by month throughout all the months of the year. Of every course were 20 and 4,000. Over the first course of the first month was Yasha being the son of Zabdiel, and his course went from and over in his course were 20 and 4,000. Of the children of Perez was the chief of all the captains of the host for the first month. And over the course of the second month was Dodai, the Ahothite, and his course was Mikloth, also the ruler. And of his course, Mikloth was also the ruler. In his course were 20 and 4,000. The third captain of the third month was Benai, the son of Jehoiada, the chief priest, and his course were 20 and 4,000. This is that Benai who was mighty among the 30 and above the 30, and in his course was Amizabad, his son. Okay, so first of all, let me explain what these courses are. There's 24,000 each course, but what do they do? They serve the king in any manner of the courses. And what this is not This is not an arrangement of the regular army. When you see these big wars, you'll see it say all David called all of Israel came and whatever. Okay, this is going to be 24,000 of these. There's going to be 12 courses in a year, in a regular year. Not quite sure they did it in a leap year. Perhaps everyone just took off and that was fine. That's kind of what's implied. But it's 288,000 people, 24 times 12. When we left off, David had at most 60,000. So he has planned, this is what he plans for it, and this is what it develops into. And so obviously it hasn't developed yet. We're going to look at how it develops how it develops to get these numbers. And also when the plan was first implemented. So he started off with these 12 courses, but without necessarily having all the people to fill them, but eventually they filled. But what were they for? Well, they weren't for the war, okay? They weren't for fighting. Now you might remember these are three of David's mighty men. Benai specifically brought out here. Okay, that's the one that's David's bodyguard. And again, we could have an entire lesson on this fellow. He comes into play often. Okay. In the story of not just David's lives, but Solomon's as well. So what they do? Well, they were like in America, kind of like the National Guard in the Army, even our Army. Well, the Army Corps of Engineers is one that takes care of dams and the flood control systems and that kind of thing. Which really have nothing to do directly with military, particularly in this modern age of America. Once upon a time, it may have had something to do with controlling the rivers, for up to the Civil War. But certainly since the Spanish-American War, it's really had no strict military role, but the Army Corps of Engineers still does it. And the National Guard, well, when you think about them, most time when you hear the Guard being called up, it's not for war. It's for some sort of natural disaster. A hurricane struck somewhere, whatever. And what are they doing? They're mobilizing a national force to go help with the problem. Well, this was sort of like that, but maybe more so like the Roman army. In the Roman army, when they were not fighting, which was really sometimes some of their at some points quite a bit of their time they weren't fighting. What were they doing? Well, besides doing some practice they were building roads, building aqueducts, and basically whatever project the emperor or the emperor wanted done, they would oversee it or sometimes provide the labor themselves, depending on the project and the nature of it. So this is like a national service, is what this is like. Not a military service. And and there could be a military aspect to it, like the Guard of the Reserve, where if there was an attack going on, then the people in that course some of them might go over to shore up the areas, shore up the defense there, while the king's mobilizing the whole army. Okay, but mostly it was taking care of whatever the king needed taken care of for the good of the country. And so. And now we haven't seen much about. We're going to get a little more details about these 24,000 and some of the people in them as we continue on. Some things will become more clear. Now we continue on here in 1 Chronicles 27, verse 7 through 11, and we read the following: The fourth captain of the fourth month was Asahel, the brother of Joab, and Zabadiah his son after him. And his course were 24,000. And the captain of the fifth month was Shamhuth, the Izrahite, and on his course was 24,000. The sixth captain of the sixth month was Ira, the son of Ikesh, the Tekoite, and his course was 24,000. The seventh captain of the seventh month was was Helez the Pelonite of the children of Ephraim, and over his course was 20 and 4,000. And the eighth captain of the 8th month was Sabachai, the Hushathite of the Zarites, and his course was 20 and 4,000. Okay, now some things. There's a couple things. There's a couple things here worth noting. We're down to the 8th month, and notice here, Asahel was over this course. Asahel died before through the mechanism of Joab, as I had mentioned. This tells us David set the course system before he had the people to fill it. Okay, so that's why he'll say sometimes, and like his son after him. Okay, he dies before this 24,000 are all gathered for this course, and in his place is his son Zebediah. So again, that tells us that David set this course process up early before Asahel died. Probably he started working on it as soon as he was made king in Hebron. He's not really, he may not be able to implement it fully until he becomes king over all of Israel. But he's already put the mechanism in place. So when that happens, when he becomes king, they can fill these slots quickly up to these numbers. Now, I want you to notice particularly here the children of Ephraim and the Zarhites. You'll see in a moment, and we'll see in a moment with our next section why I bring that out. The ninth captain of the 9th month was Aviezer of Anatothite, Anatothite. There we go, Anatothite of the Benjamites, and his course was 20 and 4,000. The 10th captain of the 10th month was Maharai, Netophathite of the Zarites, and his course were 20 and 4,000. And the 11th captain of the 11th month was Benai the Paranathite of the children of Ephraim, and his course was 20 and 4,000. And the 12th captain of the 12th month was Heldai the Netophathite of Othniel, and his course was 20 and 4,000. Okay, notice we got two Othnielthites. Of the Zarites twice. Of the children of Ephraim twice. Well, what's this tell us? That these courses were not one per tribe. That's what they tell us. And it's stressing all of them, they got the exact same number of people that they're over. It's in their course. The exact same number. Well, these tribes aren't the same size, except. Well, that's one, but really what David's doing here is he's unifying Israel. He's shifting their mind. His plan is to shift their mindset from members of their tribe first and members of Israel second. Like we saw, and that's what led to some of these wars we saw between tribes of Israel during the time of the judges. And like here in America, the mindset of people, like once say the Revolutionary War was ended, before the Revolutionary War, in their mind, the mindset of the people was they were members of their colony first, American second, and British third. When the Brits are taken out, they still got this mindset of states. I mean, the word state, we'll use that word not just mean in the sense of the United States, a part of the U.S., a state inside the United States, but we'll use that term state for like talking about a country. The State Department deals with the countries, France, Britain, whatever, right? Okay, well, their mindset was they were separate countries originally who joined together to free themselves from the tyranny of the British and to form a common union. But this mindset led to this whole states' right thing, and really the states' rights thing was mostly a cover to continue slavery in a lot of cases. And the Union, started having the American first state, remember my state second mindset, but in the South it was still had that remember the state first, the country second mindset. And of course, it led to the Civil War. And that really didn't change even after the Civil War. What really was the turning point was when the Spanish attacked a passenger ship and started the Spanish-American War. Suddenly, people weren't Texans and Vermonters or Mainers and and Illinoisans and so on and so forth. Attack on one was an attack on all, and the army was still somewhat segregated as maybe a group from Texas who would have a branch of the military, but it began shifting. And even in World War II, you sometimes saw that. But after post World War II, the units are all mixed. I joined the Air Force. I didn't go in a unit with other people from only my state. In fact, they purposely try to diversify them so people learn, because they got to work together of different ethnicities and skin colors and from different regions of the country, different regions of even inside of a larger state. They got to put all that aside and work together. And that's what David's doing here. And that each month, some from every tribe, from all these towns scattered all across Israel, are going to have to show up for their turn of national service and learn to work together and start erasing this mindset of members of my tribe first. A lot of times it's even worse than that. Members of my little town first, members of my tribe, members of Israel, and reversing that and let them see that, so they understand they need to look at themselves the other way around. And that's the way really everything has to be. Every organization has to work that way to be successful, or you end up with a lot of infighting and just things don't work well. That's why David's doing this, setting this up. Even though he doesn't have the people, obviously when he set it up, he didn't have the people to fill these 24,000 each course at the time he set it up. But he's looking ahead. A wise man sees ahead and takes action, we're told in Proverbs. And that's exactly what he's doing here. Now we're going to go to Chronicles 12, verse 22 through 28. We're going to read about how he gets the people to fill these slots up. They were these 288,000. And the most he has 60,000 when he made king in Hebron. Well, here's where you can get the rest of these people. Here's where you can get the rest of these people, start getting them from. For at that time, day by day, there came to David to help him, until it was like a great host, like the host of God. And these are the numbers of the bands that were ready armed to the war, and came to David at Hebron, turned the kingdom of Saul to turn the kingdom of Saul to him according to the word of the Lord. The children of Judah that bear shield and spear were 6,800 ready armed for war. Of the children of Simeon, mighty men of valor for the war, 7,100. Of the children of Levi, 4,600. And Jehoiada was the leader of the Aaronites, and with him were 3,700. And Zadok, a young man of mighty valor, and of his father's house 22 captains, or 22. All right. So notice these people start coming in here while he's in Hebron. The other group we looked at came when he's still in Ziklag, but now now he's went to Hebron, where the Lord had told him to go and set up and become king and crowned king of Judah. Now we were starting to help him, and notice some interesting things here. The first thing of interest is it notice that Simeon sends 7,100 and Judah only 6,800. And to put you in remembrance, remember this should be little polka dots, as I've mentioned before, because it's just a bunch of cities and a little area right around them. And all the farmland in between them belongs to Judah. Okay. But Simeon is much smaller than Judah. Yet Simeon is sending more people than Judah. Now, of the Levites, and notice how they're separated out. These are some of the regular Levites, 4,600. Okay, the tabernacle, the ark's not been in the tabernacle. Neither been we're going through all the motions without it. Or it's just been torn down, But regardless of how it is, the Levites, because of all the internal fight between David chased Saul, and particularly as Saul started chasing David, except, okay, the Levites are showing up. So the hope that they can get back to their job ultimately. Those they didn't call them men of war. Now, Jehoiada was the leader of the Aaronites, but the Aaronites are the priest. He is the high priest. He's the candidate to be the high priest, or effectively is acting like the high priest with respect to the priests at that time. They're with him, and there's 3,700 of them. Now Zadok's also associated with the priest, and that was his father's house has 22 captains. And remember, those captains we saw can be captains of 10, 50, 100, or 1,000. So there's at least 8,300 here, plus these guys. Again, out of these first three, Judah is the smallest. And you remember all three of these were daughters of Leah. Reuben being the oldest one. Now we continue on here in 1 Chronicles 12, verse 29 through 34. And the children of Benjamin, the kindred of Saul, 3,000. For up to here, the greatest part of them had kept the ward of the house of Saul. And the children of Ephraim, 20,800. Men of valor, mighty men of valor, famous throughout the house of their fathers. To half the tribe of Ephraim, 18,000, which were expressed to name to come and make David king. And the children of Issachar, of them which had understanding of the times, to know what Israel ought to do, the heads of them were 200, and all their brethren were at their command. Of Zebulun, such as went forth to battle, expert in war, with all battles in war, 50,000, which could keep rank. They were not of a double heart. And of Naphtali, 1,000 captains, with them shield and spear, 30 and 7,000. Okay. So now notice 3,000 out Benjamin. Most of them kept the ward of the house of Saul. But they stayed with the house of Saul even after Ishbosheth was murdered. They still stayed there. And there's no one ruling up there. But that's part of the reason why people are coming to David. They need a ruler. They don't want to go back to the mess they had often under the judges. They know they wanted a king. And notice Manasseh, that's what they come there for. Now 28,800. Well, again, larger than Judah by a long ways. David's own tribe. 18,000. Now that's referring to this West Manasseh on this map. Okay, 18,000 here in Ephraim, And Ephraim's smaller, and it started with 100 people originally. But notice it's again, more of them are coming down to help. The children of Issachar. Now here's the key phrase we need to notice. I notice Zebulun 50,000. 50,000. And remember, they got the smallest amount of land. Remember, that land was given proportionally members within their tribe. You know, I remember some of this land this was over here that West Manasseh took. Okay. But still, they were the smallest tribe. And Zebulun has 50,000. And notice they were not of double heart. They weren't wishy-washy at all. And Naphtali, 1,000, well, really 38,700. I mean, 38,000. And there's Naphtali way up here. Naphtali's, I should say. Naphtali way up here. This is, of course, where Messiah was from this area right up here. Okay. Of Nazareth, right around here. So, but the biggest phrase here that you need to understand is about Issachar. Notice the heads of them were 200, all their brethren were at their command. They don't know. We don't tell how many there were. Just 200 of them were captains. Notice all their brethren were at their command. But notice what how it's saying about them. They were men of understanding of the times to know what Israel ought to do. And so that's what we need to be. We need to understand the times we live in to know what our country ought to do. In my case, it's America. Someone listening might be in a different country. But they knew what to do. They knew Israel, if they go back to this infighting, all these external enemies are going to start taking advantage of them and, kind of doing like Hamas did with them, did when Israel had all this infighting on October 6th and October 7th. They're being attacked by Hamas and on all these other fronts. Their enemies, these proxies of Iran, have been waiting for years for the opportunity, and they gave it to them by fighting each other and a bunch of other stuff they shouldn't have been doing. And Issachar doesn't want them to know, understands that and knows what Israel ought to do, and that is make David the king. But we need to understand the times we live in and know what we ought to do in our personal lives as well as that for our country. Now, we're going to continue on here in 1 Chronicles 12, 35 through 40, and read about the rest of them. Of the Danites, expert in war, 28,600. Of Asher, such was forth went to battle for war, 40,000. On the other side of the Jordan, the Reubites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, and all manners of instruments of war for the battle, 120,000. Okay, I mean, right here alone, you have 188,600 in that last little group we saw here. And it's bigger than all the others we've mentioned before, but Danites, all these on this side of the Jordan River, and Asher way up here. Okay, so this is how David can get 288,000. Now, and all these were men of war that could keep rank. They came with a perfect heart to Hebron to make David king over all Israel. And all the rest of Israel were with one heart to make David king. And while they were with David 3 days, eating and drinking, for their brethren had prepared for them. where they were nigh unto them, even to Issachar and Zebulun, uh, even unto Issachar and Zebulun and Naphtali, brought bread on asses and on camels and on mules and on oxen, and meat, meal, cakes of flour, figs, and bunches of grapes, raisins, wine, and oil, and oxen and sheep abundantly. For there was joy in Israel. Okay, so notice the rest of these people. It's these people right up here in this hill country. Issachar, Nebulun, Naphtali. Okay, not Zebulun, but this isn't really hill country. This is more like Iowa right here. And half of this is as well. And this is all hill country up here. But this whole area up here made this 2-day journey, or really probably 3-day down to Hebron, bringing this, and they had a food for they brought enough food for 3 days to feed this massive amount of people. So, and some of them weren't not so exact. So maybe all these add up to 288,000. They're not as close. Now they're making David king over Israel. They made him king, and they have this 3-day celebration of it. Now, if David didn't say, if the word's not there, we don't know if it's a mishta, just a celebration, or a cog. David declared it. If David declared it, it's a cog. But a family can have a celebration over anything they want, a mishta. But either way, there is great joy. So the kingdom of David has come to fruition now. And that there itself is a prophetic picture. They go to Hebron, and now there's a long gap between when he came to Hebron, was made king over part, till they come to Hebron, come to him, and he becomes king over all. And the same way with Messiah. He's king over part today, but one day he's going to be king over all. Second Samuel 5, 1 through 5. We're going to go back to our main part of our text. We read this important background information about what, and we're going to pick up where they're there to make him king in Hebron, in this 3-day celebration. And it came to pass, all the tribes of Israel came, all the tribes of Israel to David unto Hebron, and spake, saying, We are your flesh, we are your bone and your flesh. And in time past, when Saul was king over us, you was he that led us out and brought in Israel. And the Lord said to you, You shall feed my people Israel, and you shall be captain over Israel. So all the elders of Israel came to the king to Hebron. And David made a league with them in Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king over Israel. David was 30 years old and began to reign, and he reigned 40 years. In Hebron, he reigned in Hebron, he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months. In Hebron, and in Jerusalem, he reigned 33 years over all of Judah, of Israel and Judah. Okay, there's a lot in there. I'll try to go over it really quickly, though. Now, to remind him, he's the one that led them out and brought them in. He was effectively the general under Saul before he started having to run from his life for Saul. When Abner then became the general, and he was general over all of the people of Israel. And I remember the Lord said, it told him to be, it commanded him really to feed my people Israel, take care of them, be captain over Israel. And so that's what that national service was talking about, was doing. and we're going to look at some more if I was going to take care of him in a minute here. Okay. That was part of that. He'd already set that up, and it came to fruition when they come to make him king. He has the numbers to do it. So all the elders of Israel came to. Now notice all the elders, and what they do, he made a league with them in Hebron before the Lord. Now I really want to bring to your attention here, made a league here, or made a covenant. We'll see there's some interchangeable language used there. But this was not just God put me in charge. You got to do whatever I say. This was a covenant agreement. The governed being ruled, being governed, the governor, the governing over by the consent of the governed. Much like the ideals of the founding of America, that was one of the founding principles in Thomas Paine's Common Sense. That all governments really can only really govern with the consent of the governed. And that's what the Shah of Iran is about to finding out there in Iran today. He supposedly has an exit plan to go to Russia and join the former brutal dictator of Syria, with their ally there in Moscow. Because the governed are no longer consenting to his governing. So David's making this with the elders of Israel, remember the elders is over each family. And also, over each family is the oldest member, whatever. But also, when they get a certain age, they're the ones that's acting judges in every town and everything. So David's making this. David doesn't say you gotta do this because the Lord said so. Blah. He makes an agreement with them, and that agreement's about their concerns. He's making an agreement to take care of them and to lead them, being captain. So they anoint him. Now notice, he's 30 years old when he begins to reign. He reigned 40 years. Now, notice these 40 years, how they're broken up. 7 and 6 months, and then 33 years over all Israel. Well, that tells us something. So when it says a number like 40 years, it means whole years, and it doesn't round. You notice that 6 months. Well, some years in the biblical calendar, because it's from new moon to new moon, you'll have to end up adjusting to keep. You have to throw an extra month, roughly 3 out of every 8 years. Out of every 8 years, you got to throw in 3 years, and the next extra month has to be added. Those have 13 months because again, a month's from new moon to new moon. Well, so they could have rounded up that it was a regular sized month, but it doesn't. So when we see 40 years, it doesn't always mean exactly 40 years to the day, when they talk about so and so, but it is going to the completion mark. How many years they complete that they complete it. And if they only make that, it'll tell you, so and so was only a couple weeks or whatever. Now, so his reign is 40 months and 6 years total. Now, this brings us to our timeline we've been keeping track of ever since we started this. And we started as year 0, to remind you, was when Adam was formed out of the dust. Well, after the Philistines returned the ark, Samuel became judge. It was half a year, 6 months, or 7 months, I think it was, before they returned the ark. So we've had this little tag going on here, and this is one reason why the 6 months gets mentioned particularly. Now it puts you back in an even number of years. And this irregularness here really kind of speaks of a period of abnormality, of distress. Now, David here, so when David's reign in Jerusalem began, normality is returning to Israel. More stability, as well, I should say, I guess, stability. A little more predictability. And he's going to reign 33 more years. which bring us all the way to the year 3111 from when Adam was formed out of the dust. And one more thing I'll bring up to you about Chronicles here. Notice 27 told the details that happened before 2012's did. Chronicles, despite its name's not always chronicle. Well, it is once you get past chapter 29, I think it is. Because before then, there's a bunch of genealogies and they'll throw things in. And it may throw something that happened. It'll say, around the time of the carrying away of Babylon or something. And the next one will be like, we'll be talking about right after Joshua enter the promised land or something. So they're not chronological, these little excerpts like this at all, until it gets past all these genealogies. So ironically, Chronicles is not chronologically in order for most of First Chronicles. So a little note here. Now, we're bringing it up because here now we're in First Chronicles now 11 verses 1 through 3. We're going to get some more details about this thing that this league he's made, in his promise to gather them. Now, let's read it. When all Israel gathered themselves to David unto Hebron, saying, "We are your flesh and your blood, we are your bone, your flesh." Moreover, when the time passed, when Saul was king, you was he that led out and brought in Israel. And the Lord God said to you, "You shall feed my people Israel, and you shall be ruler over my people Israel." Then all the leaders came, and all the elders of Israel came. Then came all the elders of Israel to the king, to Hebron, and David made a covenant with them for the Lord. They anointed David over king over Israel according to the word by Samuel. Of course, a league is like an alliance, whatever. But here's the covenant, as I was mentioning. They make that formalizes that alliance. And again, he's agreeing to feed them and lead them. Okay, and another important point here is you are flesh, our bone, our flesh and bone. Remember, in the Torah, it says the leader of a group of the Israelites, but we've shown in Scripture it's going to apply to every ethnic group. And it must be a native, the top one must be a native born of that ethnic group, their flesh and blood. That's why Joseph only rises to the prime minister. You never see anyone rise up beyond right beneath the king. Mordecai, prime minister, right beneath Ahasuerus. Daniel, prime minister under 2 Babylonian kings or emperors and 2 Persian or Medo-Persian kings or emperors, but never to the top spot. David has to be a descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to be king. And mostly importantly, according to the word of the Lord by Samuel. David didn't become king by his political wits, by conquering someone. It was all because the Lord had said he was going to become king through the prophet Samuel, and the Lord brought it to pass. And you have that same mindset with your life. If God's told you he's going to do something, don't you try to force it to happen. We've looked at people in that. Now, eventually, because God said it happened, it still happens for them. But man, they get themselves in so much trouble and grief by trying to force it. In the meantime, just trust God to take care of it like David did. Now we're going to 1 Chronicles 29, 26 to 27, and we're learn one more important thing about David becoming king over all Israel. Thus David, the son of Jesse, reigned over all Israel. By that time, he reigned over Israel 40 years. 7 years reigned he in Hebron, and 33 years reigned he in Jerusalem. Now, the important phrase in this here is the son of Jesse. I mean, that expression's used with David over and over again. Well, what's the point? Well, the point is his legitimacy as king. Jesse, his father, it shows he has the right lineage, as we saw in the book of Ruth. And it goes back to Perez, but Perez was born out of wedlock. David, counting Perez as number 1 and David as number 10, is the 10th from there. David's in the right line to be the legitimate king. He's from the right tribe. He's in the right generation. Jesse, his father, wasn't in the right generation. He was only the 9th generation of someone in the line of someone born out of wedlock, and he was not, therefore that he was not disqualified from being king. He couldn't stand in the congregation. And I explained why in a previous one, why God made that law in a previous one. But David now, he's of the right tribe, the right lineage, in the right generation, the right man for the right times. This is the reason why it's brought out. And it's like Messiah. It says in the fullness of time he came. And he had to have the right lineage. So why Matthew starts out with, the son of Abraham, the son of David, showing he has the right lineage. David here's a picture of Messiah, and his kingdom, the kingdom of David is a picture of the kingdom of Messiah. Now become clearer as we go along, looking at how he runs the kingdom and everything. Okay, let's go to 2 Samuel 5, verses 6 through 10, pick up back in our main narrative here, and see what happens next. He's down in Hebron. He's been made king, but he ain't got a cap. Well, Hebron's perhaps not very well centrally located, for one thing. Hebron's down here. Well, that's great for most of Judah. It's pretty central for Judah, most of the people in Judah, but not so great for people up here. So he needs a more centrally located capital, because his kingdom is moved north. The bulk of it is north now, where it used to be. So we're going to read about his plan, about him getting that location next. And so here in 2 Samuel 5, verse 6 through 10, we start. And the king and his men went to Jerusalem to the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land, which spake unto David, saying, except you take away the blind and the lame, you shall not come into here, thinking David cannot come into here. Nevertheless, David took the stronghold of Zion, the same as the city of David. And David said on that day, whosoever gets up to the gutter and smites the Jebusites, and the lame and the blind are hated of David, so he shall be chief and captain. Wherefore they said, the blind and the lame shall not come into the house. So David went into the fort and called it the city of David. And David built round about from Millo and inward. And David went on, became great, and the God of Israel, so the God of the host was with him. Okay, there's a little bit to explain here in this little passage. Well, here's the Jebusites. We'll talk a little more about them in a little more detail in a moment here. But they were one of those Canaanite tribes Israel was supposed to drive out. Now, what they're saying here, by can't take away them, what they're saying is, even if they were the only ones defending it, you couldn't get in here. They're trusting in their wall and their stronghold and so on and so forth. But David took it anyways. And notice David notices there's this gutter, this this thing that where the wires going out of, draining out of, kind of in a way like a big sewer pipe, kind of. Okay, that they're having water out through, and he says, he realizes someone can go up through that way and get inside the city. And smite the. Now, why is it the blind, the lame, and the blind are hated of his soul? We'll get back to that. He's going to be chief and captain. So there's two questions here. Why does David say that? Because of their taunt here. But he's not advocating. He doesn't. If he's not hating a blind man in the sense of I see him, I'm going to kill him. The Torah explicitly commands that concerning the blind and the lame, to not hinder them in any way and to help them. I mean, it's really the root of America's laws for helping the disabled. Okay, so David is not acting here contrary to the Torah by doing that. The ones he's talking about, these in particular, who are supposedly going to keep him out, but mostly this is a spiritual thing. It's really against the spirit of arrogance that the Jebusites have, and the spirit that causes lameness and blindness. Therefore, they said the lame and the blind shall not come into the house, the house of the king. Well, we're going to see how God's going to resolve that. Okay, there's a picture here of Messiah. Now, their question is, David's the one who sees the way in, so why didn't he just do it himself? Because this is no different than Caleb, who maybe could have done it, but he's feeling a challenge to see who's going to, the chief and the captain. The chief over all those courses we saw, the captain over the military, who's going to be the general. And he wants someone that's capable to do it, to fill the spot. And he needs something, that person to do something his shoulders are capable to fill the spot, so everyone will accept them in that spot without any kind of they'll know that they were meritorious, that they got the position on merit, not because of personal relationship with David or bought the position or something like that. Now, next, I want you to notice the city of David is just this fort. The city of Zion, the city of David, is the fort of the citadel of David. It's still there today in Jerusalem, been rebuilt. It was rebuilt, but in the same location, according to the Arabs who lived that, there's never likely to be a few Jews in Jerusalem ever. When Mark Twain went there in 1867, there was a bunch of church. They said the only ones here is a bunch of church buildings, and the people do them. They have ship food in them, and a small village of Jews. It's all who lived in Jerusalem. The caretakers of the sites, the Muslim, Orthodox, and Catholic holy sites, the only inhabitants that were people were Jews, and they knew where the city of David was. They were there when the Romans destroyed it. They knew later to tell whoever where to rebuild it. That is Zion. Now, Milo is another town. So David now is going to build a wall over there. Most of the wall of Jerusalem. This is where David lives. This is where the government seat is. It'd be like the mall in Washington, D.C. That's not the whole city. But the mall, the area connects the Capitol building, the Supreme Court building, and the White House. and a bunch of monuments as well. Well, that's kind of the equivalent here of the city of David. This is where the seat of the government's going to be in Jerusalem, but it's not covering the whole city. And notice that I was expanding Jerusalem. He's annexing this Milo and building it inward. And where I live, there's a city called Tulsa. But in there, there'll be places like Brookside, Red Oak. Well, you look on a map from the 1950s, those were all separate cities. They got annexed and became part of Tulsa. But they've still kept their names, those areas. And that's what's going on here. The stronghold of Zion is the city of David. That's one area of Jerusalem. Milo's another. And he's building this wall around there. Well, how are they going to? That's why he needs it. So that labor we talked about, those courses are who's going to build that wall. So David grows on and God's with him. Now, we're going to read some more details about this process here in 1 Chronicles 11, 4, and 9. And David and all Israel went to Jerusalem, which is Jebus, where the Jebusites were, the inhabitants of the land. And the inhabitants of Jebus said unto David, you shall not come up to here, unless David took the castle of Zion, which is the city of David. Whosoever smites the Jebusites first shall be the chief and the captain. David said. So Joab, the son of Zeruiah, went up first and was chief. David dwelt in the castle, therefore they called it the city of David. He built the city around about even Milo round about, and Joab repaired the rest of the city. So David waxed greater and greater, for the Lord of hosts was with him. Okay, so now we see clearly what I was telling you earlier. This is why he's called the chief here. Because notice he's over this building project. And where did he get the labor for it? Those courses we looked at. Every month, he had 24,000 people to assist him to do whatever he needed, do whatever the king needed done. In this case, prepare the rest of the city. And that means build a wall. He's going to build a wall around it and repair it, and perhaps start building houses in there for people to live as well inside the wall he built. This castle of David, the citadel of David, that's the city of David. That's where David's going to live and his family except. But other people in the government and the like have to have somewhere to live too. And so this is part of how he's growing. Now we're talking about this other part here about what's this thing about the blame of the blind. Wait a minute, I forgot about this. The Jebus, the city is called Jebus. Jebusi are people who live there. And you remember, people have said, well, it stood there for 500 years. No, we looked in there. In the book of Judges, twice Israel destroyed this place, and then they didn't go occupy it. Now, by the time of David, they've been there 200 or 300 years. Again, but twice. Once Judah did it, and like, hey, it's over in Benjamin's land. And Benjamin, Benjamin went, we can't do that. It belongs to Benjamin. It's over in their land. And Benjamin didn't go in. Another time, if I'm right, maybe the Benjamites did it. They still didn't go in. Twice it was destroyed, and twice it was not occupied. The Jebusites filled it back, went back in and rebuilt it. So so we got this. So that's this thing, and then we got the thing about the lame and the blind. Now here is what it's a perfect picture of. Remember, we're not going to come into the house. The house. Well, here's the house of God, as it's called on earth, the temple, and we see them in there. So but notice what happens while they're in there. In Matthew 21, verse 14 through 15. The lame and the blind came to him in the temple, and he healed them. And the chief priests and the scribes saw the wonderful things he did, and the children crying in the temple and saying, Hosanna to the Son of David. They were sore displeased. Notice how he hit when they came into the house of God, into the lame and the blind, where? In Jerusalem, where the Jebusites had made this taunt about the lame and the blind. What? The lame and the blindness was hated by Messiah, not the people, their condition. And he healed them. And notice they recognize, save us. Hosanna means save us. They yelled, save us to the Son of David. Notice how they recognize Messiah as the Son of David because he healed them. Now, the lame and the blind are not in the house. And more than that, you go through the Gospels and you see every single healing, every single miracle Jesus did in Jerusalem itself. When they healed someone, it gives any information about what they were healed of. It's only the lame and the blind. Remember, he said the man born blind was in Jerusalem and didn't even know who he was. He didn't do it by faith. He didn't know who told him. He testified. The lame man didn't have a clue who he was either. But he got him walked. What did he do? He testified to the same group here. Only every time Messiah, Jesus, Yeshua, however you like, Jesus, if you want to go with Greek, healed someone in Jerusalem, that we were given specific information about. It's only the lame and the blind. And it's going back to refute the real refuting of this boast of the Jebusites, which is really, they were idol worshippers hooked up with Satan, the boast of Satan. He is destroying the power of Satan in Jerusalem by doing this. And that was pictured prophetically by David capturing the city. Okay, now we're going to continue on here. We're going to go to 1 Chronicles 27, resume there, because he's going to tell us about how David's going to set up his government. How the government over Israel is going to be set up now he's got his capital. And here's what we read in 1 Chronicles 27, verse 16 through 22. Moreover, the tribes of Israel, the ruler of the Reubenites was Eliezer, the son of Zechari. Of the Simeonites, Shephatiah, the son of Maacah. Of the Levites, Hashabiah, the son of Chemiel. Of the Arites, Zadok. Of Judah, Eliahu, of the brand of David. Of Issachar, Omri, the son of Michael. Of Zebulun, Mishamiah, the son of Obadiah. Of Naphtali, Yeremoth, the son of Azriel. Of the children of Ephraim, Hoshea, the son of Azaziah. Of the half tribe of Manasseh, Joel, the son of Pedaiah. Of the half tribe of Manasseh in Gilead, Iddo, the son of Zechariah. Of Benjamin, Yasiel, the son of Abner. Of Dan, Azarel, the son of Jehoram. These are the princes of the tribes of Israel. Okay. Now you may have noticed that the Gad's not mentioned here. And we don't know who ruled it, but we can surmise it followed the same pattern. And there's 13 mentioned here with Zadok. Notice we mentioned him earlier. He is the head. He's the head of the family of the priest, the Aaronites, the priest. Okay, he's the ruler of them. and the rest of the Levites is Chemiel. Remember, the Levites are scattered in cities all over the place. Every one of these red dots is a city of refuge, and it's a Levitical city. And there's a bunch of other ones. And the priests all have their own in one little area. And the others and the rest of the Levites are scattered. So, that's why the mentioning of it. The priests are down this area. Now, so notice one of the brother of David, one of his brothers is captain over Judah. But notice over down here in Benjamin, the son of Abner. Abner was the general, the general of the house of Saul after David, and the one that Joab had maliciously murdered. And that's all there really was to it. He just murdered him. And David knew it and cursed him for it. But Joab is so crafty and underhanded, he couldn't do anything about it. And note, and I may have brought this up earlier, but Joab here, notice the son of Zeruiah. Zeruiah is David's sister. But everyone can see that Joab's the one who rose to the challenge. Okay, so no one can accuse him of picking his family member. Showing favoritism based on families, nepotism, or whatever. Now, David, his brother is over Judah. Now this is bringing us up to an important point here. It appears in line with what we saw in Scripture earlier, like under Moses and stuff, that they are picking their own leaders. And in relation to the United States, you can think of each tribe as a state, and these are being the governors, and they're picking their own. Now they happen to pick his brother Elihu. Okay, but David didn't assign him. David could have assigned his own family over each tribe. But again, what's the rule? It's got to be someone whose physical lineage, is a member of that tribe, to be head of the tribe. Not that they can be placed in the government. They can't be the top person. Zadok is an Aaronite, is himself the son of Aaron. We're talking about physically. So on and so forth. But they're picking out the princes of the tribes of Israel. And again, we saw that clearly under Moses and Joshua both. We talked about that before and showed it. Now, in First Chronicles, so that's first thing he does. Ain't gonna be just one king ruling over everything. He's gonna let these people take care of their own little areas first, so he can focus on national things that affect all the tribes, or a region, a group of tribes. But it's stuff that's printed in just to them themselves. You're going to let them handle that themselves. Now we're looking at the next thing he's doing here. Remember, they want the king to feed them and lead them. So, all right, that's part of his leading. He's going to distribute that leadership out, delegate some of that down. He didn't make a Moses mistake and trying to do it all himself. So Jethro came along and straightened him out. Now, here's part of this feeding plan. If we read here in 1 Chronicles 27, verse 25 through 29. Over the king's treasure was Osmaveth, the son of Adiel. Over the storehouse in the fields, and the cities and the villages and the castles was Jehonathan, the son of Uzziah. And over them did the work of the field, of the tillage of the ground, was Ezri, the son of Caleb. And over the vineyards was Shimei, the Ramathite. And over the increase of the vineyards was Zabdi, the Shithmite. And over the village, and over the olive trees and the sycamore trees and the low plains were Baal-Hanan, the Githarite. And over the cellars was Joash. Over the fields of Sharon was Shitrai, the Sharonite. And over the flocks that were in the valleys were Shaphat, the son of Adlai. Okay. So notice, first of all, he has a treasurer. And notice, and he got storehouses where? In fields like granaries, cities, villages, castles. He's got a guy in charge making sure those things got foods distributed evenly everywhere. And note, and villages. So what's David doing here? He's providing his country with food security. And this is sort of, it's partly like a Department of Agriculture in America, and partly like I ain't sure which one's which department right off the top of my head is in charge of SNAP, maybe the Department of Agriculture as well. But they're just not just gathering the food, growing it right, making sure things are good, but also distributing it when it's needed to make sure the people of Israel are fed, that they have food security. And this word sycamore trees, don't think of a sycamore tree like out here, out where I grew up in Arkansas. I guess they probably here in Oklahoma too. I haven't seen any. We call them horse apples. They have a big old thing about the size of a softball. It's green, all rough, all bumpy on its exterior, and this white milky stuff, and it's not edible, but horses can eat them. That's why we call them horse apples. This is a variety. This is referring to a type of fig tree that grows out in Israel, in the round of Israel, related to the fig tree. Okay, so this is something that's edible, but the point is he's making sure people everything people need, everything's going to need. Someone's watching over it, and he doesn't just they're taking care of some of their own land, but he has, as it were, government land, places people hadn't went and occupied and whatever, like they're supposed to. And he's making sure that food is being stored up, so if famine hits, they'll have food security, or war hits, or whatever. And it's everywhere. If someone takes a city, they're not all starving in the villages or in the castle. The castle gets taken, it's all in one place. And even the fields right there out there where it's being harvested. And perhaps warehoused there and then moved into these other places later. Or perhaps just to take care of the people who live in the rural areas. So he's got food security taken care of. He's also going to take care of some other things here. And taking care and feed in his feed and lead plan here. All right. Well, we read about that here in 1 Chronicles 27, verse 30 through 34. Over the camels was Abil, the Ishmaelite, and over the asses was Jediah, the Meronothite. Over the flocks was Yaziz, the Hagarite. These were rulers of the substance which was King David's. And King David's uncle was a counselor, a wise man, and a scribe. And Jael, the son of Hachmoni, was with the king's sons. And Ahithophel was the king's counselor, and Hushai, the Archite, was the king's companion. And after Ahithophel was Jehoiada, the son of Benaiah, and Abiathar, and the general of the king's army was Joab. Okay, well, let's start at the top here. First thing I want you to notice is these two are not physical descendants of Israel, and they are strangers living among the people of Israel. Remember, the rule in Exodus 12 is if you get circumcised, you're no longer a stranger. You're accounted as if you're a member of one of the tribes. You're no longer called a ger, unlike what the rabbis do. They refer to someone who got circumcised as a ger to Zedekim, literally a stranger of righteousness. No, you're no more a stranger, it says in Exodus 12. This means the Bible being consistent with itself means these were not
circumcised. But in their land of Israel, they cannot. They also got only be there as worshipers of the God of Israel. And because as long as they're in the land, they got to keep a lot of the customs that come with being circumcised, but not all. So he is including foreigners, Gentiles. See, there's no preference to the Jews. Why would he pick these two? Because they were the most qualified. That's why he's doing things by merit, like he did with Joab. When he showed up with Joab, everyone else he picks, they understand he is not picking people by favoritism. He's doing it by merit. And that merit leaves room for the stranger. Because the word of God says a man's gift makes room for him. And show me someone really skillful in what they do. They will not stand before ordinary men, they'll stand before kings. So that's what first thing. Now notice the next thing. Who is his counselor? His counselor here is uncle. Well, what's the significance of that? Wisdom's found the gray hair, we're told. The hoary head, as it says in King James. David didn't pick someone his own age to be his counselor in his own generation. He picked someone, he let his uncle, that older one who was older and wiser, give him advice about what to do. And notice this guy was also a scribe. Now this is really important because the scribe is writing down when the king's telling people, when he's hearing a case, tell him such and such, whatever, and making a decision. The scribe's job is to write all those details down. Now later, someone might go, well, wait, king, didn't you say such and such? And the scribe can look it up and see if he did or not. Or maybe the king may reply back, well, didn't you promise such and such? The scribe can go through, find it, and look it up and see whether or not that, the guy protests, see whether or not, that was the case. It's keeping everything honest and up front, on the up and up. And his job's just to write what occurs, not, what he wished occurred, not some sort of revisionist writing, and not to mess with the records later. Now, this guy's important too, because notice what his job is. He's with the king's sons. What's that mean? It means he's the one that's tutoring them. He is training one of them. He's training all of them, hopefully, to be good men, loyal to the kingdom, loyal to the king, whoever happens to be, and one of them is going to be the king. Now, this guy here is his counselor. This is his top counselor. Okay, notice that guy was a counselor, but this guy is, and we'll see this guy several more times as we study out if we look through the days of the kingdom. Now, this guy was the king's companion. Now, that's I don't understand what that means. That doesn't mean he's just his best friend, his friend. He may have been, but he has a very important job. You'll understand the importance of it. He was like the court jester. And his job is like David needs someone just to vent to. This guy's going to listen. David's feeling down. This guy's going to do something to cheer him up, and maybe something foolish, like the court jesters did. Because remember, laughter is like medicine. And this guy's job is to administer that medicine when needed. But he's going to be with David. He's going to go with David whenever David goes anywhere. He's going to go there with him. When if David's in a carriage riding one place to another, he's not, unless he wants to be alone, he's not going to be alone. He's going to have this guy with him, someone to talk to. And, and a lot of time, and all this to help David, what people say today, David's mental health, okay? And to keep him in a good mood, and sometimes just a listening ear. So as he just talks through something,
talking out loud to process it so you make a good decision. Now, notice this after Ahithophel, he has another counselor, Jehoiada the son of Benaiah. That's that same Benaiah that was the son of Jehoiada, the high priest. So this is the grandson of the other one who got the same name. And Abiathar also. So he's got more than one counselor. Remember, Solomon said many counselors. A king needs many counselors to make him wise. By many counselors, a plan succeeds. You don't have just one. We've got 4 listed here. Now, notice last is the general of the army, Joab. Now, why is Joab last? Because war is the last resort. These counselors and all this, and the scribe would be the one writing down covenants, etc. They are all part of what we might call the State Department today in America. Various different titles, but the same function across different, and their entire thing is they are part of this whole process of diplomacy, which just simply trying to solve things by peaceful agreements, hopefully mutually beneficial agreements, because those are the kind that last. You try to make one that takes advantage of somebody else, eventually they'll come back on you. They'll break their agreement or attack you or whatever the case may be. And the last resort is go to war, but David knows that last resort may have to be used sometimes. And he needs a general. And remember, Joab's captain over him, that's the general of the army. So Joab is over this in times of peace. Joab's overseeing the civilian service corps, and that's like the civilian. I mean, also one of the functions like the civil conservation corps that was in the Great Depression, where they hired all these state parks got all built, all this infrastructure, built them trails and just whatever. They had all these work camps, and people from all over the place were gathered in these places who needed jobs. And it gave them a sense of pride and community, and they built it. But someone over that. Well, in times of war, in David's government, that's Joab. In times of peace. In times of war, Joab's job is, of course, to lead the army. So that's why he's called chief and captain. Now David's got himself a city, he's got his government set up, but he needs somewhere to live. And now we're going to find out where he's going to live in that city. In 2 Samuel 5, 11 through 12. And Hiram, king of Tyre, sent messengers to David, and cedar trees and carpenters and masons, and they built David a house. And David perceived the Lord had established him king over Israel. They had exalted his kingdom for his people Israel's sake. Okay. First thing you know, Tyre sent messengers to David. Messengers of peace. Messengers to tell him what he was going to do. Didn't surprise him. And notice what I sent to him. Tell him what he wanted to do. He brought him cedar trees. He brought him material and workers, and they built David's house. Didn't cost David a dime. And David didn't even ask for it from this guy. Well, what's Tyre? It is a Gentile nation. Now, they were idol worshippers. Now, it's possible Hiram, there's indication that some other kings of idol worshiping, or like the general Naaman, who owns the mound of dirt. He's a worshiper of God, but he's not in Israel anymore. Okay, he had to go back to Syria. It's possible this guy became a worshiper of God, but he is a Gentile bringing what? This. It foreshadows the house of David being built by what? Gentiles bringing materials and labor to build it. And that's exactly what we saw. We'll see it again around the time of tabernacles and stuff again, how Gentiles, perhaps we'll see it again, bring in their wealth and also the laborers to build the beautified Jerusalem to build up the house of Messiah. So that, and because of that, David understands that's why he understands the Lord preceded him king over his, has established him. David hadn't done anything to cause any of this to happen on his own. It didn't say David sent messengers to the king of Tyre, and Tyre said, "Oh yeah, sure, I'll just made some sort of deal." Tyre just started bringing it into him because he saw David becoming greater and greater. He wants to be on the winning side. He wants to be in good with David. He don't want to be the enemy of David. He wants David to be his ally. And again, that's exactly what happens when Messiah is reigning. Those who submit to him, they don't defend themselves no more. He'll be their defense. Israel will be their defense. And if anyone attacks them, he, through Israel, will deal with them, the attacker. So, he's exalted his kingdom for his people Israel's sake. Because when a rising tide lifts all boats. When wealth starts being sent into other nations to the king, it's gonna spread out over everyone. The king's gonna buy stuff. From people who are going to spend money buying stuff. From people who are going to spend money buying stuff. And it really will. That is really how economics really works, despite what is just the way it is. There's always be richer people and poorer people. But it always goes from the rich, and the rich get richer, so will the poor also over time. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. Remember those clamshell CD players? You can put a DVD in them and flip it open and watch it on a little screen. First time I saw one of those was $1,000. Who could afford that? Really rich people. Last time I saw one, about 10 years after I saw the first one, it was in a bargain bin. It was $25. Well, who can afford that? Practically everybody here in America. So that is how economics really work. So when he exalts his kingdom, it's going to help all the people. He's going to be able to feed and lead the people even better. Now we're looking at what David does once he has this nice house. And here's what we read in 2 Samuel. To continue on 2 Samuel, our main text, chapter 5, verses 13 through 16. David took more concubines and wives out of Jerusalem after his come from Hebron, and there were yet sons and daughters born to David. These been the name of those born to him in Jerusalem: Shamuel, Shabab, and Nathan and Solomon. Ibhar also, and Eliashua, and Nepheg, and Yathia, and Elishama, and Eliada, and Eliphalet. Okay, so this is 11 sons here named. These are more. And notice he had wives and now we know how many wives. We saw that last time. He has 7 altogether. He's got concubines. I'm going to explain the difference here for a minute. A concubine is not like a mistress. Her children are counted as legitimate. But typically in a royal household, her children, depends on the exact, unless none of his wives don't have any children, if any of the wives have a son, the group of sons from the wives has going to have precedence to be king over all the sons of the concubines. They're considered a lower class. And because of the difference, and the difference is this: a wife, and it's a marriage for a wife, it's joining together two families. The wife's family under law in America, we got that expression in law. In what law? In English law that we came from, that ruled over colonial America. That you had certain obligations, legal obligations to your brother, your father, your mother, and when you married, your wife's siblings and parents, now those responsibilities, you have those same responsibilities for them as well. Wives, so wives are, so there's a wife, two families have been joined together, and it's same for her, and it's same for that cuts both ways, right? So you're joining two families together. Concubine is just a deal between a man and a woman, and it's not joining two families together, just the man and a woman. And the reason why this often happened is discussed with Abraham, who had concubines. Is like Abraham's case, it's an act. It was an act of kindness, not of sexual lust, because the only way women were going to be taken care of in their old age back in the day, men too, but women were even more dependent on this, was to have children. Okay. Well, no one's going to, a concubine was typically someone with no family and no one to enforce it, by the way, either. When you married someone who had a family, her brothers or whoever may come after you if you treat her badly. Concubine has no one to defend her like that. In fact, she is subject to abuse, and by getting married to someone and becoming their concubine, she has now got some protection. She's got someone to give her children to take care of her in her old age and the like. But it doesn't come, but it doesn't come with the obligations and the advantages of two families being joined together. So this is why, and the word concubine, the Arabic word means half wife. In China, the emperors used to have concubines. The word concubine literally means accepted one, because their children are accepted as legitimate. They are not born out of wedlock, but it's a different type of marriage. There's a wife marriage and a concubine marriage. And there's a word here for us in America. When you marry someone under God's system and they have a family, you are obligated. You are not just marrying her or him, you're marrying their family, whether you like it or not. And you have obligations to them, whether you like it or not. In America, a lot of times people want to treat their wives as if they were concubines, or their wives want to be treated as if they were concubines. Because a wife don't have much. Well, a concubine does have an obligation to the people's family. We saw with Abraham, his concubines have taken care of his son after Sarah dies, okay. Then later she becomes his wife. And I explained how that worked as well way back then. But how she could increase her status. Well, let me phrase that. She became his wife by taking care of his son. Because she's only concerned with her own children as long as the concubine, but when she's a wife, she's concerned with her husband's children, no matter who their mother is. So, these are all sons of his wives. And notice, and daughters, plural. Okay. And these are all sons listed here. Now, we're reading a little bit more detail about these children David has in Jerusalem after he came to Jerusalem. Here in 1 Chronicles 3, verses 5 through 9. They were born to him in Jerusalem, Shemaiah and Shabab and Nathan and Solomon, 4 of Bathsheba, the daughter of Amiel. Ibhar also, and Elishama, and Eliphet, and Noga, and Nepheg, and Yathia, and Elishama, and Eliada, and Eliphet, 9. All these are the sons of David besides the sons of the concubines. And Tamar, their sister. Okay. Remember, he had daughters. Well, only one gets listed here. And this one's from one of these wives. Now, 4 of them, it's told who the wife's name is actually given. Bathsheba is also known as Bathsheba. And we'll see her more later in the future. But four of these are from her. And remember, he had before her seven wives. He didn't marry her yet in our narrative we've been looking at. He's going to marry her later. The other seven, between them, give him 9 children, 9 sons. Okay, so this is 13, a pool of 13 sons. One of them's going to become king. Now, he also has, notice, besides the sons of the concubines, he also has other sons. Now, why is there 9? Why is there 13 here and over there 11? Well, notice 2 of these guys have the same name twice, Elishama and Eliphet. And if you look, there's one more list of these. And if you look, these two of these have a different name. I think it's these 2 have a different name as well. So a little bit of a condensation, or perhaps 2 of them were just born later when this was written down by a scribe at some point, and this was written down by another scribe at another point, and these other 2 were probably just born a little later, possibly. But so David has 13. You know, 12 tribes plus one for each of the 12 tribes plus, that's the 2 13 if you count the two halves, Joseph's 2 sons instead of him. He has one for each of them, and he has Tamar, their sister. This is the only girl we'll list it. So David's going to have, and the reason why he's kings, it wasn't uncommon to have more than one wife. And one reason was, we've seen before, like with Rachel, except, well, if he has only one, happened like King Henry VIII, and they're barren for some reason, or they die in childbirth, whatever. He needs an heir after him. Well, by having one wife, he ups his chance of having one, and he also creates a larger pool to pick one from. Remember, the rule is the first sons, it's theirs to lose the birthright and the blessing. He doesn't have to give it to the first one. And David here has been doing everything according to people's ability, giving it to the one with the most, that shows the most, that's most meritorious. And remember, David also has consistently consulted the Lord on things. He's going to consider that primarily above everything else. But a larger pool, more wise, and he's more likely to have a good heir to rule over the people after him. However, I want to bring one more thing up. David wasn't supposed to multiply wives. The Torah said that the rule of the king we looked at, not to multiply 4 things: gold, horses, and wives. And David here has definitely ignored that. 8 wives, and we'll see later, at least 10 concubines. 10 are mentioned later. David has definitely not been obedient to that commandment. It's to have one wife, one man. But nonetheless, he's followed this practice. That wasn't, it's maybe the way the other kings did things, and now he's doing it as well. Now let's continue on in 2 Samuel, our main narrative, and see what happens next here with David in the kingdom of David as he's setting it up. And when the Philistines heard they anointed David over the king, all the Philistines came up to seek David, and David heard it and went down to the hold. And the Philistines came and spread themselves in the valley of Rephaim. And David inquired of the Lord, saying, "Shall I go up to the Philistines? Will you deliver them into my hand?" And the Lord said to David, "Go up, I'll doubtless deliver the Philistines into your hand." And David came to Baal Perazim, and David smote them there, and said, "The Lord has broken forth upon my enemies before me as the breach of waters." Wherefore he called the name of that place Baal Perazim. And when they left their and there they left their images, and David and his men burned them. Okay, a little bit to explain here. Now, this Rephaim was one of the giants, race of the giants. And the Philistines are once again, there's no giants here, but they're associating themselves with them, mentioned here, okay? They're those giants that are associated with Satan. The Philistines are a bunch of Gentiles. Now remember, the Philistines had heard, David had lived among them for a year and 4 months in Ziklag, you know, and now 5.5 years later, and 7.5 years later, they're showing up, and the key thing is they spread themselves in the valley. They could have been seeing someone to congratulate him or something, but they weren't. They spread. This is the case of the big old army out there, and David wants to know. He didn't just assume, hey, I got the army, I'm the king, I got the blessing of God on me, I'm going to go there and do that. He inquires of the Lord. The Lord tells him to go ahead. Now, notice this thing that most people miss. After David gets the victory there, notice the Lord has broken forth my enemies before me as the breach of the waters. You know, like a dam breaking, and the water's flooding out, okay? He doesn't call it Philistia Perazim, the breaking forth, the breach of the Philistines. He calls it the breach of Baal, their idol. And notice what they did. They left their idols behind after encountering David. And notice those idols, his men burn them. Those idols are gone forever. It's a prophetic picture it's tied to this next prophetic picture we're going to look at as well. You know, and we'll look at what's foreshadowing after that. Now this occurred around the same time here in second Samuel 23 verse 17 through 13, which was kind of a summary about previous things. And it's referring to this time here, and we'll see how we know that. But it's talking about the mighty men. And 3 of the 30 chief went down and came to David in the harvest time to the cave of Adullam. And the troop of the Philistines pitched in the valley of Rephaim. And David was in the hold, and the garrison of the Philistines was then in Bethlehem. And David longed and said, oh, that woman give me a drink of water of the well of Bethlehem, which is by the gate. And the three mighty men broke through the host of the Philistines, drew water of the well of Bethlehem that was by the gate, and took it to David and brought it to David. Nonetheless, he would not drink it thereof, but poured it out before the Lord. They said to me, oh Lord, I should not do this. Oh Lord, that I should do this. Is this not the blood of men that went in jeopardy of their lives? Therefore, he would not drink it. And these things did these three mighty men. Now, we don't know which 3 it was exactly. It just says 3 out of the 30. It listed them. Could be one of those 2 groups of 3 he had. 37 together. Joab the top, a group of 3. The top group of 3. The second group of 3, and then the 30 others. Okay. In fact, it's implied it's part of the 3 of the 30 others. Okay, 3 of the chief of the 30 chief. All right, 3 of those 30 others we read about did this. But David here, this water, notice that water he realizes represents their blood. And that water is precious. It came from the house of bread, Bethlehem. And the cave of Adullam, let's see, it means like refuge. But he's in the harvest time. That's a key phrase. Why is it telling us time of year? Because there's a prophetic picture of it. The harvest is great, but he's in a safe place. He's not going down there where they are. His men do it. But that blood, that water represents the blood, and he sees that blood as precious. The water's precious. It represents blood that's precious as well. And of course, it came from Bethlehem. And this speaks, all this is a prophetic picture that's brought out right here in 1 Thessalonians 1:9, what's a picture of those two things. They themselves show us what may have entered into you. Now you turned to God from idols to serve the true and living God, to wait for a son from heaven, whom he raised from the dead, even Jesus, which delivered us from the wrath to come. See, that blood was the precious, water represented the precious blood of Jesus, just like the wine at communion talks about in first, I believe it's First Corinthians chapter 15, I believe it is. Anyways, that the bread is his body. That blood is that precious blood does what? Delivers from the wrath to come. That bread of life from the house of bread, Messiah. He raised from the dead. Well, he had to die first. It was a bloody death. But what did it do for the Gentiles? They left their idols behind, never to return to them. They're serving the living and true God. And that's the prophetic picture. And it's about Messiah's first coming, this first harvest. This harvest associated with the Gentiles. Where Gentiles will be harvested out, for among the Gentiles are going to be harvested out, who turn from idolatry to the precious blood of Jesus, Yeshua, however you like, Jesus, familiar with Greek, through his blood to turn to the living God. And that's exactly what's happened to Gentile believers of every ethnic group, land, and language, as his kingdom, phase 1, has rolled out throughout the world. The offer of peace first, followed by the war. Okay. Now we're going to finish this chapter up and look at yet another prophetic picture that's pictured here by the kingdom of David, of the kingdom of Messiah. And the Philistines came up yet again and spread themselves in the valley of Rephaim. And David inquired of it. He said, "You shall not go up, but fetch a compass round behind them, and come upon them over against the mulberry trees. And let it be when you hear the sound of the going in the tops of the mulberry trees, and you shall bestir yourself. For the Lord shall go out before you and smite the host of the Philistines." And David did so, and the Lord commanded him, and smote the Philistines from Geba, even until you come to Gezer. Okay, those mulberry trees are in a minute, but a little bit more detail. But I want you to notice something here. This expression came up yet again. Remember, why do the people rage? That was quoted by Peter about the Gentiles and the Jewish leaders who got the Gentiles to crucify Messiah. But you look at that Psalms, it's also about a time to come, them raging against the King of Israel, Messiah, and forming a big army to take him in. These representatives of the Gentiles came again and spread themselves in the valley of the giant. And spread themselves healings. It means Rapha means healings, but Raphaim's. But they, yeah, it's going to bring death to some, but it's going to bring healing to the world. Remember, the salvation of Israel is life from the dead for the Gentiles, for told in Psalms. The first healing, first that came was a picture of the healing that came to Gentiles all over the world who accepted Messiah. Well, now, but it started, of course, with an act of war and violence against Messiah himself. When the people gathered around him, the heathen raged, the Gentiles raged. So picture them raging a second time. Now notice when David inquires again, makes no, and God gives him a different answer this time. He tells him to go all the way around them and come upon them over against the mulberry trees. Come from a direction they aren't expecting at a time that they don't recognize. And notice, David's not to pick the time. The Father's going to pick the time, the Lord. When you hear the sound of goings in the top of a going, like the sound of a mighty rushing wind, the tops of the mulberry trees, then you're gonna come out and show up suddenly upon them. And notice the Lord's going to go before you. Just like we saw with Melech Adonai, with Joshua and the like. The Lord's going to lead this. David's going to follow him and his men. They're going to come unexpectedly upon them and destroy many of them. Now, we're going to read about this, the same thing again, with a few more important details that are brought out here in 1 Chronicles 14, verse 13 through 17. And the Philistines spread themselves abroad in the valley. Therefore David inquired again of God, and God said to him, go not up after them, turn away from them, and come upon them over against the mulberry trees. And it shall be when you hear the sound going on the tops of the mulberry trees, you shall go out to battle. For God has gone before you to smite the host of the Philistines. David therefore did as God commanded him, and they smote the host of the Philistines from Gibeon even to Gazer. And the fame of David went out to all lands, and the Lord brought the fear of him upon all nations. Okay. Now, turn away from them. It's going to look like to them he's not coming. They're going to be, where is the coming of this king of Israel? But he's going to come at them from a direction they're expecting at a time that they're not expecting. And the Lord is going to go before them. So by the doing of the Lord. And he's going to smite this great host. And what's the effect that going to be? His fame's going to go upon all lands. And the fear of the Lord, and the Lord brought the fear of him upon all nations. The king of Israel, all nations are going to fear him. Some voluntarily, like Hiram was a picture of, others because of this great military victory. Now, there's significance to these mulberry trees, and I'm going to explain it to you why it's particularly brought them out. Now, if you've never seen a mulberry tree, you may not. It's maybe a little hard to understand the significance. But here's a mulberry tree, a picture of one, and there's a full size one right here. You can see it's a real tree. Well, what do you see that you don't expect? these berries that look like blackberries or raspberries. You expect most of your berries, true berries, are on a bush, not on a tree or a vine, like raspberries. Wild raspberries grow on a vine, not on a tree. This tree, this is a picture of Gentiles who you wouldn't expect being grafted in part of the tree of Israel, of believers, of what people might call the church. So the sound of a mighty rushing wind at the tops of the church is what it's a picture of. It's an act of the Holy Spirit that's brought Gentiles and grafted them in to the tree of Israel. And here's the picture of this being fulfilled, because he's going to work to this church as well, not just the physical descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And here, and we see this picture fulfilled here, or what this picture is here in Revelation 19, verse 12 through 16. His eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns. He had a name written that no man knew but he himself. He was clothed with vesture dipped in blood, and his name was called the Word of God. And the armies that were in heaven followed him on white horses, clothed in fine linen, white and clean. Out of his mouth goes a sharp sword. He should smite the nations. He shall rule them with a rod of iron. And he treads the winepress of the fierceness and the wrath of Almighty God. And on his vesture, and on his thigh, a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Okay. This is what that's a picture of. This second time, when the heathen rage, when the Philistines come up, picture of the Gentiles coming, raging against the anointed one. As it says in the Psalms, the Lord is anointed one, God and his Messiah. He's going to come he's going to come to deliver Israel from a direction they don't expect, the sky. They're looking for him to come from up there, looking for him to come there. They may be looking for a plane, but they're looking for the sky to roll back like a scroll. And him and this massive army of people in immortal bodies, the church, as Paul refers to it, Shaul, the Apostle Paul, to be with him in the Spirit. And God's going to go before him. Now, Lord, don't think of an English, of someone who owns land in England. That's what a Lord, so the title Lord is. In Roman times, Lord was the emperor. In fact, the only one often who was they allowed to apply the word to was the emperor of Rome. Kyrios in Greek. And that's why it's such an offense to call Jesus Lord. Now is he King of Kings like an emperor? He's Lord of Lords. And in the context of the United States, the only thing of each state is being a country, and the president would be like the emperor, but he'd be like the emperor over all those emperors if there's arranged that well over the world. Okay. The fear of nations, of all nations, is going to come upon him. Is going to come upon them. Is going to come upon, the fear of him is going to come upon all nations, what I must say. His fame is going to go out throughout the world. It's going out through all the world right now to the gospel being spread. We're making him famous, as some people say it. We're making his name known. But when he returns to this mighty army, nations are going to fear him, and his fame is going to go out throughout the world. It comes from a direction nobody expects. With an army nobody expects, who have the power of that mighty rushing wind of Gentiles over Gentiles grafted into Israel. So the important thing here is be ready. You don't want to be a spectator of the rapture and a participant of the tribulation. You want to be a participant of the rapture that Jesus said flat out in Luke 21:36 was before the tribulation. 35:36, he left no room for any other understanding. You agree with him or you don't. You want to be a participant. You want to be a participant in the rapture and a spectator of the tribulation until it's time to come back with him. Because the kingdom of David is going to be the kingdom of David is going to be set over Israel, and the kingdom of the son of David is going to spread from there throughout all the world, as we detailed in our last series when we talked about the Feast of Tabernacles, how that will roll out, but it will roll out and cover the whole earth. Be on the winning side like King Hiram. Come to the Lord in peace and bring him tribute, offerings, tithes even, willingly. But more important than that, give him your heart and your whole life. Be like those men who were not double-hearted. Be single-hearted towards the Lord. And serve him with all your might for all your days, because he will lead you and feed you if you'll do that. That's all I have for this week. Until next week, shalom.